What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my trusty co-host Dave Martin Swagger. And Dave, I needed you here today because we have a lot to get through. So we're gonna jump right in after we tell the people to subscribe if you're watching on youtube.com/nostalgiapod, and also go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod to follow the podcast any way you want to at NostalgiaPod on Twitter. Dave, Disney Plus. We've had it for over a year now. And I think other than The Mandalorian, I've been kind of wondering, why am I subscribed to this? I haven't really watched many of the movies on there. I watched a couple of the other original shows. Not great. And so I've kind of been wondering, what are we getting out of this? We got the Mulan access. Still have to pay $30 for it. And finally,
On there for free now.
yeah, well, we do it for the pod, so take our money. But finally, this past weekend, Disney Plus dropped a whole bunch of news, and you kind of start to see what the Plus is all about, right?
One could say that. One could say that. And it's funny because despite a lack of consistent content, I think, to at least to adults, in terms of new content, it's been Mandalorian or bust through the first year for just about everyone I know. Like, yeah, there's that Jeff Goldblum show. I don't really know anyone who evangelizes for that. The Right Stuff show didn't get well reviewed. But they still told us that 86 million people are subscribed to Disney Plus worldwide. And it's like, wow, when you have a killer app like The Mandalorian, that's all it takes, I guess. Or if you have children, in which case this is the never ending repository of adolescent entertainment that parents have long wanted and they don't have to pay for rental prices and digital purchases anymore. So I guess that's all it was. But either way, you and I have a lot more to look forward to on Disney Plus. And it seems like Disney expects this feeling because they forecasted that by 2024, they expect to have 230 to 260 million subscribers, which is more than Netflix currently has right now, which is just a really outlandish, wild number to have them publicly project like that. But either way, Disney Plus is not slowing down.
Yeah, and I think given the news that they rolled out, there's reason to be excited. I mean, it seems like there's something out there for everybody, and they're really doubling down in, I'd say, three places, right? It's Star Wars, it's Marvel, and it's Pixar. And those seem to be the three main areas that they're trying to build out with TV shows and movies. I guess I wanted to ask you, what was the news that was most exciting to you that came out of this announcement?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of angles to it. There's a lot. I mean, you can look up. There's a wide range of news coming out. They said that they're going to be making 100 original titles, pieces of content a year, which is like a fifth of what Netflix does for context, but still a lot considering it's a lot more than what they've been doing. And there's like little tidbits of news, right? Like it seems like Hulu is going to become the Searchlight home of her content. So
Right.
we expect French Dispatch to eventually live there, whether it's debuted there or after a theater run. Stuff like that comes out. Expanding FX on Hulu to 30 shows a year. That's awesome. Obviously, because we uh, associate FX with such a high quality, and there's some really notable new shows announced within that, like the previously known Shogun remake, but also, of course, Noah Hawley tackling Alien, which had been rumored but not officially announced. That's very exciting news. Um, and like Pixar, I think I think to me what Pixar was they announced two original movies in addition to a prequel or spin-off. In this case, a Toy Story prequel, Lightyear. I was like, okay, cool. They're still trying to thread that needle in terms of what makes their bread and a creative, you know, expression. That's nice because they made a lot of sequels in the last decade.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like it has to be the Star Wars news because the Star Wars news was less known. Like the Marvel news, we already knew about 8 MCU Disney Plus shows. We got
Mhm.
knowledge of a few more, right? The Sam Jackson, Ben Mendelsohn one, which we had a little inkling about. The Ironheart one, uh, little tidbits like Tim Roth is going to come back for She-Hulk. Like, but we knew most of those MCU tidbits, right? And I guess John Watts is directing Fantastic Four, which I don't know about you, but that's kind of a underwhelming choice to me. He's
Yeah,
the
well,
director of the Spider-Man movies, but either way, it's got to be the Star Wars news because a lot of that was unknown.
yeah. Although I do have to say, getting Christian Bale as Gore the God Butcher and
What a
reading a
name.
little bit about that villain seems like that sets Thor: Love and Thunder up to be
Yeah.
quite the what was that, the fourth movie in that franchise. So
Yes.
I agree though. Star Wars seems to be there. Yeah, I'm most interested. Of course, we got the Ahsoka spinoff, which we kind of expected. Obi-Wan Kenobi going to be filming in Boston, so maybe we'll see some more Bill Burr in
Boston,
that series.
England, that is.
Yeah, no, I know, but it's interesting because we're getting Hayden Christensen back to be in some of those episodes.
Lot to
Interested to
chew
see.
on with that one, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to hear your opinion because I know that he got blasted for his portrayal of Anakin, but I think you give him a little more credit than most people do, right?
I think most people, I mean, it was a wooden performance, but the script was also trash. And
Quicksand.
he was given a lot of shit. And I think a lot of people that like appreciate the prequels for what they are, or at least like the lore aspect of the prequels, kind of just wish it went better for Hayden Christensen because it kind of like tailed off his career. And he's a good actor. If you watch Shattered Glass, you would know that. Um, but yeah, I mean, just this thing, like just thinking about it, like canonically speaking, like um, they said it's 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, so like about a little over halfway between New Hope and Revenge of the Sith. So Obi-Wan's older. Uh, Vader is well in his suit at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's fucked up. So like Hayden Christensen isn't just going to be like in the Vader suit, right? I have to imagine this is all in Obi-Wan's head or Vader's head as well. That way they actually can act without the stuff, without like the age makeup and the armor and stuff. I have to imagine it's something like that because we know from New Hope that they don't actually meet between Revenge and New Hope, given the dialogue they have. So it's in the head, it's in the mind, it's dreams, visions, stuff like that. So in that sense, there's a lot of opportunity. So it's interesting, but I'm just happy to see Hayden again because a lot of people, myself included, kind of hope we got like him as a Force Ghost in Rise of Skywalker or something. He did have his vocal cameo, but it's interesting. It's tantalizing at least.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I imagine it's gonna be some flashback stuff, maybe some like Clone War
Sure.
flashback stuff. I wonder if then that means Natalie Portman is also brought on board. Seems like she might be in good standing again, potentially with the She-Hulk and or it's a Thor movie. Sorry,
Yeah,
Thor
she's
So,
confirmed to be in Thor 4.
so there's some potential for that, but we'll see. Out of the other movies, though, there was a lot of really exciting like shows or movies announced. Is there any that stood out to you in particular?
Well, it's kind of interesting as you think about it. There's a lot of Star Wars news, mainly shows. The future of Star Wars in the interim is largely on TV. And the best thing about Star Wars, really, since last year, has been on TV anyway, The Mandalorian. But if you look at those TV offerings, it's kind of a lot of things, right? You have Obi-Wan, you have a Lando event series, you have Ahsoka limited series. Those are all known quantities to Lucasfilm, to the fans, right? They're all kind of like set in various eras. We got news that the Cassian Andor spin-off Andor from Rogue One spin-off specifically is 3 weeks into production, so that's exciting. But again, that's a kind of a known quantity, known time period. The Bad Batch, kind of like a continuation of the Clone Wars lore in a certain sense, known quantity. It's Acolyte that I'm excited about because that could be anything. That's the Leslie. We knew Leslie Headland was associated with Star Wars as of a few months ago, but this is going to be set in the about to begin High Republic era of Star Wars content. That's a comics and not books time in Star Wars that's about to begin at the beginning of 2021. It's thousands of years in the past, and that new canon in the past, way in the past stuff is being reestablished at this point. So Acolyte, that could be anything because it's not connected to anything we've seen before. And those
Yeah.
books and comics are going to get into that too. So it's exciting just to find. It's been a long time. We talk about and think about it way faster than this stuff progresses, right? Like
Hmm.
Star Wars existing outside of the now quite familiar stuff we know.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the one with the most possibility, and you're kind of like, where's that going to go? But the one that got me going the most was Patty Jenkins directing Rogue Squadron, right? So
Sure.
if we're gonna get Top Gun, but just Star Wars, yeah, I'm all in. Sign me up for that, and especially bring the video game back. I mean, that N64 game is one of my all-time favorites.
You can get Star Wars Squadrons right now, man. That is as flight simmy as it gets. That game is fun and challenging. But yeah, I mean, the thing about the and we knew Taika was doing one, and we know Patty Jenkins. That's just two disparate Star Wars films, 2023, 2025. So like I said, it's TV in the short term. That's not a trilogy. Those are not connected. And from what we understand, Lucasfilm was taking pitches around town. What do you like about Star Wars? What interests you? What ideas do you have? And I think that's actually kind of cool if we're going to step back from the tradition of trilogies that we knew, because Star Wars is a sandbox. Star Wars has all this genre potential. Mandalorian is giving us a lot of that in the Western mold. Now we can get like you said, Top Gun. We get like some true action sensibilities. Right, there's so much still untapped potential in Star Wars, and I think those two movies could very well deliver on that when they're not beholden to you know certain legacy gatekeeping and stuff like that. So a lot of news, but that's definitely exciting. I feel like people just have a good feeling about Lucasfilm again. It's been a minute because it's been a very polarizing past few years. So I think generally speaking, everyone's pretty happy with everything that we've learned. That's nice.
I
Nice change of
completely,
pace.
yeah, I completely agree. And I think just in general, I'm excited about pretty much everything coming out here. I mean, we're already looking at Soul at the end of this month, coming out Christmas Day, which we'll be
Yeah.
reviewing. Getting a lot of buzz for top
Yes.
10 lists and potential Oscar ramifications, but there's just a lot of exciting stuff on the horizon, and it makes you really feel like Disney Plus is a must subscribe. So even though that number you mentioned is lofty, I think it's definitely attainable for them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because like not everything's exciting. You can tell there's some decisions that are really just like gotta turn out that content. You know how Netflix does it, right? They just make some stuff just to make some
Mhm.
stuff. They gotta fill it out. But like
Sure.
there's a prequel spin-off to Beauty and the Beast with Josh Gad, Luke Evans coming back. Like no one cares about that shit. Like no one's
Well, yeah,
excited
but
about that. That's like the equivalent of like the straight to DVD sequels that used to come out back in the day, for those animated films. But it's just content for
yeah,
them. But I
just
do think they announced enough like event content stuff. And again, if you like the more heady stuff, they're making more FX shows than before. So there's plenty here, I think.
build out that library. And who keeps building out their library is Taylor Swift, Dave. Um, this past Friday, we also got a lot of Taylor Swift uh, news because she was dropping a new album called Evermore, a sister album to Folklore. And I think if you had paid attention at all to Folklore and then this announcement, the first thing that kind of caught your eye was same clothing, same style for Taylor, but in color this time. So you're thinking, ooh, maybe we're getting something a little brighter, something that's going to be a little bit more out of that singer songwriter indie mold than this last one. And Dave, what did we get?
We got more of Folklore, but not as good. We
Yeah.
got the B sides, even if she evidently wrote and made most of these songs after Folklore was done. Either way, this is the B side of Folklore. And as a result, it's just lesser. This is the third Taylor Swift album in less than a year and a half. This is new ground for Taylor, but I do think artistically, Evermore is just kind of more of the same.
Yeah. I think I mean, even the production credits. I mean, mostly this is Aaron Dessner. Jack Antonoff's not as involved in this one. I think
Yep,
he only has songwriting credits on two of the songs.
correct.
And both of those songs I think stand out to me a bit, and maybe that's that Anson off touch. But it's funny because as we work through this album, there's moments that, and these are all well crafted, fine songs. But like you said, I feel like this just more builds out her library, and that B side, and there's nothing that's really jumps out a lot. I think actually the moments that jump out the most are when this is injected with some life from some guests, whether that's the National jumping on to duet with her, Haim kind of coming on to provide that like country badass woman vibe to No Body
Sure.
No Crime. Um, and there's a couple of really catchy songs. Like I thought Dorothy had a really catchy chorus to it and hook, but a lot of these I didn't find as memorable as a lot of the stuff on Folklore. Any of the songs really stand out to you?
Yeah, No Body No Crime from Haim stands out, which is interesting because if you listen to it, it's like, this is like before he cheats from Carrie Underwood. Like
Yeah.
you know these vibes, but the
Hmm.
song doesn't actually go all the
Hmm.
way Carrie Underwood's 15-year-old smash hit did, you know. Um, but I actually really like that one because that kind of reminds me of like that. Taylor's just gonna spin a yarn, just kind of tell a story, you know, like she
Hmm.
did on a lot of Folklore, like the Great American Dynasty, for example. You know, just kind of telling a story. It's not really supposed to be anecdotal or metaphorical. It's just kind of just a tale she likely made up, and here it is. And yeah, of course, it's Haim. Like a lot of their guest spots, they're kind of just in the background on the side. But I think that song's pretty catchy. I think it's one of the more upbeat moments
Hmm.
on Folklore and Evermore, for that matter. And considering that's not really what she's going for, it'll just by design make your ears perk up a little bit more. Um, so that's by far my favorite song on this. I just don't think we have like deep cuts on Evermore the way Folklore did. Like there's no Mirror Ball, there's no Betty, there's nothing that's like that exciting for like the hardcore people to discuss, in my opinion, from what I could tell. You know, because
Yeah.
this is a lot of kind of the same types of songs, but again, not as ambitious because they're not new anymore and just don't they don't really hit because they're inherently soft and folk rock indebted, you know. Um, and honestly, I really did not like how it started. Like Folklore starts off with one of my favorite songs off on the album. I think that song is great. And this we get Willow, and I did not like Taylor's vocal performance on that at all. In particular, in the chorus when she's singing Hollow in particular, like I just didn't think Taylor's like range was getting there on that song to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean this is her just kind of showing out and doing what she wants, which is cool and all, and that's kind of evident because Joe Alwyn is credited on this 3 times as a songwriter. Like you can tell she's just kind of doing whatever she wants, and that's cool and all. But I don't think it's
Sure.
that special of an album.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think this is going to be one of Taylor's, most remembered albums. I think her songwriting ability seems to really be finding itself again after getting a little bit lost around Reputation. And we've seen it growing and growing. Recently, she was credited by, I think it was Dolly Parton or another very famous female vocalist as being a young songwriter that they look up to and that they admire their work. So, songs like "Cowboy Like Me," like I mentioned, "Dorothy," "Nobody No Crime," like those are really well written songs. "Gold Rush" too stands out, but in the end, when I turn on Taylor Swift in a couple of years, I'm not going to be coming back to this album. I don't think. I am interested though. You know, Taylor after this year of oddity and uncertainty and if you watch the Folklore documentary, it seems like a lot of this was inspired by the pandemic and things that were going on. Taylor kind of felt like I just want to record and get music out. I mean, how are these songs going to play into her live shows, which are these stadium arena tours, or are these just going to be forgotten? You know?
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like pre-pandemic she didn't even want to do another arena tour after the Lover tour. It sounded like she was had different ideas for that, which is interesting because that's leaving a lot of money on the table
Yeah.
when you're Taylor Swift. But um, yeah, I mean, there's only room in a traditional arena set for a handful of these type of songs. You know, here's the come down moment. Well, till Taylor gets to rest a little bit and sit down with a guitar or something, you know, and strum along to one of these acoustic ballads, and then she'll get back up and do some of the bigger hits. You know, and I think that's kind of all it is, unless she does a smaller scale tour where it's all these kind of songs. But I really can't see that happening.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't see that happening either. Or she's gonna be doing like a lot more shows to meet the demand for these tickets. It's a interesting thing to think about. Or is Taylor moving away from touring, which I think would be even more interesting because, like you said, that's a lot of money and really in the prime of her career.
Yeah, that's where the majority of her money is made, like just about every artist. So
Mhm.
that would be something for sure.
Definitely. Well, we'll keep tabs on it, but let's not spend too much time on Taylor. Let's move on to another up and coming artist, Channel Trace, dropping his third EP. I can't go outside, and he's been an artist that's really only kind of been around for the last couple of years, really making coming on the scene in um, 2018, and you know, Channel Trace first came on our radar with Disclosure this past year. You know, that an album that we liked, maybe didn't love, but I think definitely one that was memorable in some ways. And for me, Channel Trace's vocal performance at the top of that album was one of the first moments in that album. I was like, "Oh shit, okay, we're getting some weird, some different here." Um, the song he was on was Lavender, their second song on that album. So I wanted to check this out. And Dave, I was really pleased listening to this album because not only did we get kind of what I expected, Channel Trace has a very low, deep, gravelly, sexy
Hmm.
voice, and I think his vocal performance on most of these tracks kind of paired with some chill hop R&B sounds. But we also got a Tyler and Tanashi spot on this, kind of coming in near the back half of the album. Um, I thought it was just a pleasant little listen, only 20 minutes long. How did you feel checking out this Channel Trace EP?
Yeah, it's really smooth. Nothing outside of my, albeit limited expectations. That's not like I'm not super familiar with those first two EPs, but yeah, I think it's pretty smooth. You know, Cali vibes, sound features. If you like that Disclosure performance, you'll definitely like this. It's easy to listen to.
Yeah, I think easy listen is definitely the way to go, and I'm very interested to see where he ends up going. Getting cosigns from Tyler, Tanashi, and then Disclosure as well. Being a Compton artist, I'm wondering if maybe we start to see him popping up on some of those West Coast type albums. I could really see him pairing well uh, with someone like Thundercat for a
Oh,
song or
sure.
two. And of course, I would love to see him work with like Anderson Paak or something like that. So I'm hoping to get a couple more of those type of people on there. Any songs that you really liked from this EP?
Definitely really like the Tyler song.
Yeah, take your time.
Tyler, much like his
No, sorry before
feature
you
on the
go.
West Side Gun album earlier in the year, is just on a big feature run. The Yachty one as well. So
Yeah,
he's a must listen these days.
yeah, I agree. Tyler Fuego, that track really stood out as well as "Take Your Time" from Tanashi, but um, I really liked Skate Depot, which is one of the singles off this. I really thought that was a track with a beat that really stood out to me, kind of like thumping, moving. And of course, Channel Trace sounds immaculate throughout. So I recommend it. Just give them a listen. I think an up and coming artist to keep tabs on. And if you did listen, drop your thoughts below. But why don't we move on to some bigger albums that came out? Because we got a couple here, and we're gonna start with Jack Harlow. And Dave, Jack Harlow was a triple XL freshman. He actually had a pretty meaningful verse for them, talking about Louisville local who was killed in the Black Lives Matter protests by police. Um, and that's an interesting thing to hear from him, right? Because when he blew up with What's Poppin', I never thought we would really get like an introspective Jack Harlow. Kind of felt like he was meant to just kind of be like a party hits type rapper. Where did he go with this album for you?
Gotta say, Triple XL is quite the designation. I was not familiar with that
XXL,
that
double
that
XL,
that magazine. um,
extra, extra, extra large for Jack.
he's not that big. Um, yeah, in a sense, it makes sense that he got the debut album out this year because he's had such a strong year, such a popular year, and coming off a Grammy nomination at that for What's Poppin'. And if you look at the push he gets, he's very much in the industry now. And Generation Now, Atlantic, they love themselves some Jack Harlow. He gets choice placements. He gets any feature he wants, as he says in this album. He is mainstream now, and he really wasn't mainstream a year ago. But I don't like this album at all, to be honest. I think it's incredibly boring and doesn't come close to something as simple yet effective as What's Poppin'. I found it very disappointing. So, and like to say, like, I don't know what he was going for, as you asked. I don't know what he was going for because he doesn't try and set any trends. He just chases the trends. He sounds like everything else. He doesn't sound that. He doesn't sound like. I don't know what Jack Harlow sounds like after hearing this album, because this album just kind of sounded like mainstream rap music to me, but not of the remarkable variety. I thought it was quite mid.
I'm surprised to hear you say that because I mean I thought this album, similar to Channel Trace, sounded pretty smooth. I think the production and the sound on here is pretty good. I wrote down some highlights like on Keep It Light. I really liked like the oohs and the O's around the chorus. I thought on Same Guys, like the bass in that and like that R&B feel was pretty nice. We get a little bit of singing there from him. Tyler Harrow, which I think is one of the um, singles off this, is probably one of the most memorable songs. Great flute in there, but I gotta be honest, I didn't really find any of the verses very memorable. Left my
Exactly.
head pretty quickly, and I'm left more remembering the sonics of That's What They All Say. Take a shot if you are playing along to the nostalgia game, because we just said sonics and that's two now. But um, yeah, I don't know, this is just kind of like laid back, smooth hip hop, but I didn't find anything particularly engaging.
Yeah, well, I think that's the issue. Is yeah, yes, the beats sound good. He had a nice budget for those beats. That is evident. Again, it makes sense. But I don't think he did anything that special with them. He's just kind of making mediocre tracks. I don't like the flow all that much. I think the delivery is fine, but I think he's quite samey usually when he's doing anything that's like familiar in terms of him as a rapper. Um, a song like Tyler Hero, which came out around when the finals were still going on. That one, that one's quite the head scratcher to me because he starts it off with the ones that hate me the most look just like me, which I find hilarious because the reason is he's successful as he is because of his whiteness, not because of his whiteness. It's like, come on, dude. Like, I find that actually incredibly unself-aware of a remark. Like, you have a legion of white fans, in addition to black fans too, but you have lots of white fans. That's why you're here. I don't understand where that line came from. Also, I thought he had a lot of weird quotables, a lot of weird one-liners on this whole album, including one on Tyler Hero. I told Boy Wonder that we might got a thumper. I've been trying to pop. Now I'm on like Shumpert. What the fuck does on like Shumpert mean? Iman Shumpert's been washed for years, and he's only like 31. What the fuck is that? That is such a
Yo,
whack reference. And you named the song Tyler Hero because he's your friend now and you're both white, but like Shumpert? What?
I
Oh,
mean,
when I first heard that, I was like, what the fuck line is that? That is
I'm
that's whack shit, man.
I'm never gonna hate on Shumpert because not only
I
a
used to love
finesse.
Shumpert, but that was in 2012. It's 2020.
I mean, dude, he bagged Tiana Taylor, or maybe the other way around. I'm not sure. And they're also in that the Fade video for Kanye is like a cat. Come on,
Oh yeah,
you
you
can't
mean
hate on Chum.
2016, the Fade video?
Yeah, I mean, are you disappointed? I guess what were your expectations for this?
Well, that's the thing. I didn't have high expectations because I didn't like Tyler Hero as a lead single. I didn't really care for the What's
Mhm.
Poppin' remix, but that's really just because I didn't like the guest spots. Like, I don't need Tory Lanez, Lil Wayne making music with Jack Harlow. I think he's all right in the Tap In remix. I like him as a talent, but because what's poppin', it's so evident. Even like, from last year, Through the Night, his first song with Bryson Tiller, his fellow Louisville compatriot. That's a little different energy than what's poppin'. It's a little lighter. That's good. I like that. But I feel like on this, like him just kind of doing the standard braggadocious stuff, I don't think he brings enough personality to it. And it just kind of comes across as dull and boring to me. Which is disappointing because again, when you have a nice beat budget, you know, I don't know. Honestly, my favorite moment on the whole thing, apart from what's poppin', would be on
When it ends.
no, it would be on Same Guy featuring Adam Levine, but that would be when you have that choir at the end singing, exalting. Jetson made another one a few times. Jetson made, of course, the producer who made What's Poppin', half the reason Jack Harlow is here today, because that beat is incredible. Jetson made having a great year, and I think that's nice. Shout out your producers a little bit more. I like that touch. But yeah, Jack himself disappointed me a lot on this album.
So I I had very little expectation for this, and I thought it was fine. Like pretty memorable, pleasant listen. Probably not a good sign for an up and coming rapper for me to be saying that about them. But you know, I've been seeing in a couple places people comparing him to Drake. I don't understand the comparison at all. I was pretty shocked. I had to read it twice. I was like, really, to Drake? And I think they need more stuff in like maybe like style, like trying to like mix like funny and kind of petty with
Okay.
sound. But yeah, I if you go read the Rolling Stone review of this, definitely
Yeah.
confunding. And
Well,
actually, Fantano mentioned him too. And Drake as like it seems like he's copying Drake.
well, sure. I mean,
Who
we
isn't?
said that about Logic for years too. I mean, Drake dominates lots of stuff, but I don't think he's not a Drake like artist though. I think that's pretty obvious. Like he does not have the versatility of Drake. Um,
No.
but yeah, I mean, like in terms of like Drake's rapping, sure, but Drake's rapping has shaped the past 10 years of rapping, so I don't think it's actually that much of a statement.
Well, check out that review. Jack Harlow. Are we putting any of these songs on the playlist? I don't think so, right?
Don't think so. What's
Yeah.
Poppin's already there. That song's great.
So, but check out the playlist either way. Nostalgia Best of 2020. You only got a month left before we start on to 2021.
Damn right.
And Dave, let's talk about another rap artist, Scott Mescudi, Kid Cudi, Man on the Moon 3. Kind of wild we're listening to this in 2020. I mean, this really brought me back to college days, Siena
Sure.
college days.
Yeah. Oh
Uh,
09, 2010, the first two the first two Man on the Moons.
and I mean, those are classics. At least to me, the first one for sure.
Definitely
Um,
the first one.
second one a bit more hit and miss, but I still ride for that album, and a couple of the tracks on there really stand out. But yeah, Man on the Moon 3, getting it in 2020, just a whole decade later. Uh, Cuddy's had quite the journey over the last 10 years. The
Really?
starting at the beginning of the decade, one of the biggest artists in rap, and starting to move into like the acting sphere, and then pretty fell off pretty quickly. Had some substance abuse issues. Came back in 2018. Kids See Ghosts. I thought was a nice revival for him, moving in the right direction. Had some good features here and there. And then where do we land with this? Do we like Man on the Moon 3? Do we feel like this is a return to form?
Yeah, it's Cuddy contains multitudes, man. He's been through a lot, as you said, but Cudi, I think, kind of came back from his darkest days some time ago at this point. Like we've kind of had that conversation already when Kids See Ghosts came out 2 years ago. Um, and if you look at his release calendar, it's not like he ever was away for that long of a time. It was more so that from a quality perspective, there was a large dip, and he's kind of clawed himself out of that. Um, but to me, I was kind of surprised about this album drop coming because he's tweeted a few weeks ago that Man on the Moon 3 was on the way, and I was like, oh wow, that's cool. I'm sure that's gonna be who knows, how far in the future. And then he just kind of surprise drops it and with a announcement, you know, a few days before. I'm like, oh shit, wow, did not expect that at all. But again, who knows? Quarantine got people working, nothing else to do. Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff on here that reminds you of those first two Man on the Moon records, the quote old Cudi, but it still sounds like I think kind of newer stuff to me. I think the Travis Scott influence is very evident on some songs. Travis Scott was barely a producer at the time of Man on the Moon, let alone a rapper. So um, there's been some growth and evolution, but yeah, this definitely continues the upward trajectory we've happily seen Cudi achieve since Kids See Ghosts. So that's great.
Yeah, I think this is a solid album from Cudi. I was getting texts from people being like, "Cudi's back. He's returned to form." I don't think there's anything nearly as catchy or captivating as some of those early hits. Like, there's not a day and night on this, so to speak. There's not something I feel like I would just throw on and like really ride to at a party. But I think this feels like a very uh, uniform and I don't know if concise is the right word, but one that had a clear vision, and it's technically in 4 acts, or maybe it's even 5 acts. No, it's 4 acts, and I don't know. It's a bit uh, bloated at points.
Yeah,
And
it's,
it
it's
sounds a bit
18 songs still at the end of the
yeah,
day.
and it sounds a bit samey to me at a lot of points, but I think overall, I'm pleased to hear this from Cuddy, and I feel like he's back. He's back in the saddle again, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, that's nice. Yeah, it definitely was long to me. It was definitely bloated to me, um, and there was a lot of stuff that doesn't really, I think, register as anything like that that's special. Because again, we've heard Cuddy pretty consistently since 2016. 2015, that was the lowest point creatively with Passion, Pain, and Demon Slaying, the rock album. That's terrible. Or no, sorry. Speed and Bullet to Heaven is the 2015 rock album. That's really bad. Passion, Pain, Demon Slaying, the 2016 album, had some decent moments. He was starting to claw his way back, and then we got Kids See Ghosts, right? So, like, we've had feature here or there from Cuddy. I think of Through the Late Night from Travis Scott's second album. I really like that performance. He's been around and kind of giving you that stuff. But Cuddy's still 36. You're not going to get Man on the Moon 1 anymore. And that's fine. And I think what's important to note is that Man on the Moon 1 in particular was an incredibly influential album on the decade that followed it in hip hop. I mentioned that on our best albums of the decade list. That album came out in October '09, but largely, affected the 2010s. And you listen to stars of today like Playboy Cardi and Lil Uzi Vert, many of them cite Cudi as a primary influence, and he, in general, was a voice of a generation the same way Kanye was before him. But as a result, when you get Man on the Moon 3 in 2020, it's coming out in a hip hop landscape that's a lot different than those first two Man on the Moon albums, right? So a lot of stuff Cudi does and does well is not as unique or as revelatory anymore because he already made it revelatory 11 years ago. And a lot of other people do that. Now it's just convention. So again, when I think of Travis Scott, it's because Travis Scott was a product of Cudi in many ways. And now you think of these songs, like, I don't know, do I want late period Cudi any more than I want really good Travis? I don't know. It depends on the song. So I actually went into this with literally no expectations or hype at all because I'm like, anything I get that LA from Cudi at this point is a complete bonus to me. You know, like I don't have expectations for Cudi anymore. It's fine. He's generally pretty good, but And I thought a song on this, like Tequila Shots, early on, I was like, wow, with that bass, that hook, that is an old school
Mhm.
Cudi song to me. I like that song a lot. I saw a lot of love for Mr. Solo Dolo 3
Yeah,
because
this
that's,
is one of my
continuation.
favorites.
Continuation. Uh, that's not like that's never been my favorite type of Cudi sound, although I do really love Solo Dolo 1 off Man on the Moon 1. That's the whoa, 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 like that shit,
Yeah,
Cuddy's giving you the hums and the woes. Uh, that inspired as that. Yeah,
I
few
think
can touch it.
Mr. Solo Dolo 3, yeah, I think Mr. Solo Dolo 3 really shines because of just his flow throughout. It's so consistent and
Sure.
like has such a nice rhythm to it. It's just really solid. I actually like one of the tracks 2 songs later, Elsie's Baby Boy.
Yes,
A
me
lot
too.
really stood out to me, and using that House of the Rising Sun sample from the Animals is kind of calls back to his When She Came Along song. I don't know if you remember that single at all, but
Mm-mm.
it's one of my favorites, and it's has that same like kind of western type feel to it, but like obviously hip hop and very cutty.
Doesn't that have a Stand By Me sample at the very end?
I think so,
The
yeah.
quote from the movie?
And then
Yeah,
he brings in Castaway later on.
right.
It's just funny how he like interspersed those throughout.
Sure.
Um, another track that really stood out to me near the top of the album is "She Knows This." Um, I don't know, just something about I think the flow again, just like that sounds a lot like Solo Dolo 3 again. It really calls back to those early albums, but feels like there's a bit of like a modern touch to it for Cuddy now. So I think there's like you said, he's not reinventing the wheel here. You're getting some more of the same, but it's just nice, I think, to have that like nostalgia almost, and some nostalgia. Hey,
Hey.
any
Yeah,
other tracks that stood out?
oh sure, yeah. I mentioned Tequila Shots. That's definitely my favorite song. I liked Another Day. I liked The Void. I think the hook on The Void, again, very
Yeah,
reminiscent of Old Cuddy. I like September 16th. Um, Throughout this, I noticed this early on, is that a lot of times he would use flows like with ad libs, and he would use his hums as the
yeah.
ad libs, which is very much a new development in terms of, that's very much a contemporary use of ad libs. But I was like, oh wow, Cuddy using his trademark hums in ad lib context is actually freaking awesome. Speaking of
Mhm.
the Travis Scott comp, I really like that a lot. Um, Having Pop Smoke on this was kind of odd to me because it's
Yeah.
just a little snippet used as a hook. It's not much of a pop performance, and you're pairing it with Skepta. And I was like, wow, I don't think Cuddy makes much of an impression at all on that track. I think it's really all
Oh,
Skepta.
yeah.
Big Smoke and Pop Smoke. Got guns as big as Kevin Hart. Like, I like Skepta on that, but that was an awfully odd pairing or trio to me. Also, Phoebe Bridgers kind of like is floating in the background, has that verse at the end. I was like, this is more muted than I expected this collab to be. How'd you feel about that one?
You know, um, it was a strange pairing in my mind. I never would put them together, but I thought it worked fine. Like it wasn't one of my favorite tracks, but I mean, when you think about Man on the Moon and just like what this whole trilogy is about, it's about loneliness, and who does loneliness better right now than Phoebe Bridgers? So,
Hmm.
yeah, her soccer mommy. Shout out to the sad girls out there. And not shout out to Taylor Swift, obviously. Um, you know, I when you were talking at the beginning, a thought came to mind. I just want to run it by you. Cuddy and Man on the Moon one, and the way that he worked with Ratatat and really like took this like
Hmm.
electric sound and
Sure.
like r- brought that into hip hop. It kind of reminds me of an album we talked about last week, Rico Nasty, and using 100 gex.
Yeah.
Dylan Brady producing those songs, like that feels like almost the evolution of Cuddy. And you talked about that influence. I think that feels like where things are going, where there's like this even more electronic, like hyped up sound. I mean, I think about a song like Alive, then I think about like iPhone or something like that, and it's like, yeah, that
Sure.
feels like they're all in the same vein. I'm hoping to see that kind of continue to evolve. Because the weirder these things are, the more interesting I find them to be.
Yeah, I agree. That'd be uh that'd be interesting. And I think that's the thing too is Man the Moon 3, even Kids See Ghosts for that matter. Cudi's not trying to establish new ground. It's kind of him just bringing his flair to what stuff sounds like these days. And hyperpop, in a certain sense, is bringing 10 years ago to now and, you know, refracting it 100 times and then like snorting it up your nose or something. But like, I don't, I don't know if does Cudi have that kind of stuff in him these days? Like, do you think he's like at the level of Charlie XCX and Rico Nasty as a 36-year-old man? Like, I don't know.
No,
Like in
probably
terms of
not.
the weirdness, like we haven't seen him experiment in really any. I'm sorry, any kind of experimentation, let alone that kind of stuff. He hasn't really experimented in years. So I don't really know if that's a smart bet to make, but um, he's active, so I hope that he continues to just bounce around and do things. I mean, he's certainly popular enough. This is actually, funny enough, going to be his best-selling album week ever, which I think speaks a lot to the streaming environment versus the complete lack of streaming when he debuted, for example. But yeah, I mean, Cuddy can just bounce around and do things. That's cool with me, but I don't think I'm gonna put too lofty expectations on him.
Yeah, no, it also seems like he's kind of moved more into that acting sphere. I mean, we talked about him with We Are Who We Are, and I think he's just interested in probably building that
Westworld.
out. So, yeah. Oh, shit. I kind of forgot he's in Westworld.
Mhm.
I try to block that out as much
He's
as I
just
can.
casting something else too. He's very busy, but music's just part of that now, not all of it, which is totally fine.
Totally fine. Any last thoughts on this?
It's got highs, man.
Yeah.
I think people saying like Cuddy's back, in a sense, I understand because like there's some highs that remind you of old Cuddy, and that's awesome. So
Definitely.
I get it in that regard.
Speaking of some highs, and also speaking of We Are Who We Are, the Avalanches dropping their third album, first one since 2016, and only second one since 2000. We Will Always Love You. And I mentioned We Are Who We Are because the title track is sung by Blood Orange, and he's just
Right.
one of a dozen features on this. I mean, or dozens of features on this album. There's, I believe, 25 songs, 112 minutes.
Mm.
You're
Not to
ranging
mention
from
myriad samples.
myriad samples. And, you know, when we talked to, I don't know if we did talk about the Avalanches album from 2016. I think
He touched
we
on it.
mentioned that they were making the comeback, but I think we were pretty much overall like, didn't reach the highs of that album from 2000, Since I Left You, which was groundbreaking and one of the best of that year. Um, I think We Will Always Love You might be my favorite EDM album of this year. It's expansive, it's bloated. I know you're gonna say there haven't been a lot of them, but this is
Yeah, I
all
was
of a
gonna
sudden a
say,
year
what are we
with
comparing it to?
well, we're comparing it to Disclosure,
That's
which
true.
I'm
That's a
surprised I
good
didn't
point.
expect it to be beat. Um,
Yeah.
and to be honest, I was trying to think what was the last like EDM album we've listened to that I like this much. Probably would have to be Charlie, not Charlie XCX, Jamie XX,
Yeah.
from a few years back. This is
It was a while ago
expansive
now. Yeah.
and weird and experimental, but I thought it really, really worked. And I think what I liked most about this was listening to it. It kind of felt like I was at an EDM show with the way that the songs kind of ebbed and flowed, brought the energy up, brought it back down. Felt very cohesive. I was really impressed. How are you feeling about We Will Always Love You?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's very impressive. 25 songs is certainly a lot. 25 songs in 70 minutes, actually kind of impressive to be that efficient. But uh, I think the live show comp makes a lot of sense because We Will Always Love You, I think demands, requires many listens just to like grasp what you're hearing. Because again, lots of features, lots of different musical ideas. You're at the highs, you're at your lows, you're upbeat, you're really slow, you're dialogue heavy, you're not. There's a lot of stuff going on. And of course, there's so many voices because of all those samples and features. So I think it's quite dense in that regard. It requires a lot of, almost effort to really understand if you want, but it doesn't demand that because it's so pleasurable to listen to most of the time that you can just kind of throw this on. And I don't think I say, I know I don't say that about electronic music these days all that often. Um, because I just don't hear this type of care all that often. Apart from like Disclosure, who we often associate with choice and impactful features and samples and ideas like that, and maybe Flume to a lesser extent. I really don't know who I even throw into this kind of bag. You know what I honestly thought of? The music isn't actually that similar, but just the flow of the album reminded me a lot of like how Daft Punk albums function, where
Yeah.
it's just grand sweeping thing. Maybe even Swedish House Mafia makes sense here too. Like
Yeah.
it's this grand sweeping thing, it goes up and down, but it's like almost orchestral in its vibe.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, I still would like to spend a lot more time with this, but I think it's quite impressive. And from what I remember about that 2016 comeback album, that almost felt more bloated because there was less space and there's a lot of guests and stuff. Again, this one, there's a lot of guests, but it seems to make more sense, and it seems like
Mhm.
there's room for all this. So I
Yeah.
liked it a lot.
It's all kind of centered around this like concept running through it of like a goodbye message, kind of to like I don't know, human existence at the beginning of it, and then it ends with like this like Morse code shout out to space in the last track of like sending human information. And I think it kind of goes in and out of some ideas around that. um, but the thing that I found most impressive, and when we talked about Taylor Swift, I forgot to mention this. Like, it felt like when the guests came on, that the sound kind of took on more what the guests wanted to do. This felt like they let the guests come on and show out, but it always kind of felt part of a whole. And that's hard to do when you have a guest like Johnny Marr, who's famous for being with the Smiths and the Pretenders and and then you have someone like Kurt Vile later on. You're jumping to Sampa the Great, Tricky, Perry. Like, you have so many different guests on here, and somehow they all just kind of work and they ebb and flow in and out. They never feel like they're taking over a track. Like, even I think the only track I even really thought about that with was Blood Orange on the title track. I mean, he raps and is just so distinctive in his sound. It's kind of hard for a track not to become a Blood Orange track. I feel like if he's on it, and then also one of my least favorite tracks, running Red Lights with Rivers Cuomo. I felt like he's just such a his voice is just kind of grating to me at times, and this is just one of those times where I was like, I'm not really feeling Rivers right here. But otherwise, it was just so impressively done and produced and cut together. Probably one of my favorite tracks was "Take Care in Your Dreaming" with Denzel Curry, Tricky, and Sampa the Great.
Mhm.
I thought that was one of the like coolest hip hop like tracks I've heard. I thought all three of them sounded excellent over it. Just it really stood out in my mind. What'd you think about that track?
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's the thing about this album is there's hip hop in spurts, but there's like a lot of genres in spurts, and
Mhm.
in that case, Denzel Curry is a logical choice because he's someone who very much dabbles in all kinds of sounds and ideas, and then Sampa the Great, uh, someone who people like, but Sampa the Great hasn't had like that big shining moment yet, at least in a mainstream standpoint. That was quite the performance to me. Um, and yeah, that's the thing. It's like going into this, I wasn't like anticipating to hear like any cool hip hop ideas. That
Yeah.
definitely surprised me.
No, definitely. I think some of the features make a lot of sense. Like, I think MGMT on Divine Chord sounds really awesome. Um, I thought it was really cool to hear the Wherever You Go, the track with Jamie XX,
Yep.
which I think you can hear some of those signature Jamie XX like build ups and the way the track is layered on that. Um, but it's funny because as I'm going through, I think the track that probably stood out the most outside of "Take Care in Your Dreaming" was "We Go On,"
Hmm.
which flips and changes like two or three times. Has just like this awesome build up. Oh man, that one's definitely going on the playlist for sure for me because I was just blown away and I had to listen to it 2 or 3 times because I was like just really impressed with the way they kind of change up the vibe. You know, at some parts it sounds like Asian influence and other parts it sounds a little bit more like the like pop EDM that we kind of come to expect, but it interflows and changes so succinctly. It's just really impressive. Any tracks that stood out for you?
Yeah, my favorite song would be "Music Makes Me High." I think that's just a banger.
Mm, yeah.
That 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 uh that song's go. That song goes. That song's really dope.
Hmm. Yeah.
Great
No.
sample again.
And I think that's the thing. You mentioned all the samples. They really chopped and screwed this together, but you don't really see the seams. It all feels like it flows well. It's glossy, really well done. Also, just want to shout out that you kind of have a lot of names on here, but there's a lot of people that are uncredited in this. Like there's a Frank Ocean sample near the end. I forgot which song. I think it's on Music and Light from when he sings Moon River. Wayne Coyne shows up on the track Gold Sky where Kurt Vile sings and Wayne Coyne sings the closing. Like there's a lot to get through here. So like you mentioned, definitely give it a few listens because it's too much to go through just one time.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, well, Dave, we're gonna move on to some movies now. We're gonna start with The Prom, where I'm just gonna talk real quick because I thought we were gonna talk about The Prom this week, and I was not correct on that. But The Prom, Ryan Murphy's newest release on Netflix. He's working, Dave, and you know, The Prom was not a good movie. I'm just gonna lay that out there. There's been some possible awards talk for James Corden in this role. He's on Gold Derby as like a dark horse for like a Best Actor nomination. It's not gonna happen. But I do feel like he has a pretty charming part in this, and really the concept is this teenager in Indiana, small town Indiana, wants to go to prom with her girlfriend, and the school is very much against that. These famous Broadway stars who have a failing show on Broadway are looking for a PR win, and so they go to champion gay rights and really use as teenagers um, the bias against her and the
Mhm.
hate against her as a way to like make themselves look good. And of course, where it ends up is pretty sweet, where they all kind of find themselves and look at themselves, come around. Um, some of those storylines for each character, you have Andrew Rannell, you have Nicole Kidman, Meryl Streep, James Corden. For all four of them, kind of hits differently. James Corden's story is about similar to the teenager in the story being kicked out because he was gay by his family. Um, it, and then Meryl Streep is just kind of trying to not be so narcissistic and trying to be a better person. Really, is like at the center of hers. Nicole Kidman and Andrew Rannell kind of just have bit parts where they come in and get to have musical numbers. Um, but I think it's varying degrees of success for them. But where it actually I think really thrived as a film was the music.
Hmm.
It's very much just like a play. You can kind of feel
It's
the three
based off of
parts.
one.
Oh, well, there you go. And I think Joe Ellen Pellman playing the lead character as Emma is just really fantastic and sings beautifully. A couple of her tracks really stood out, and I feel like she's probably a rising star out of this. Kerry Washington has a pretty nothing role as the kind of the villain of the story, the principal who doesn't want things to change and kind of homophobic in some ways. Um, but yeah, pretty much her and Andrew Rannell were the two main parts I really took to because Andrew Rannell has a fun musical number about being nice people and how being gay is a sin in the Bible, but so are all these ridiculous things. So we should just be tolerant of each other and not look to the Bible for moral guidance on that thing. Uh, yeah, I mean overall, the music is good, structure okay, and some of the storylines are okay, but for the most part, I felt like this was pretty nothing and kind of continues the trend for Ryan Murphy, where he makes kind of interesting stuff that really isn't that good at the heart of it. So you gonna check it out?
Yeah, I'm gonna look at it. You need stuff at the bottom of the list, right? But I mean, yeah, Ryan Murphy, for what Netflix needs, sometimes they just need minutes. They just need you to go out there and play the season. And that's Ryan Murphy. He makes them shows and movies, produces other stuff that he's not directly involved in. And, if the stuff gets made, it's there, it gets watched. Whether it's good or not, that's for you to decide. That doesn't matter to him. He's just putting up shots.
Yeah.
And I feel like Netflix is very happy with this because he's doing exactly what he does. I think this is probably most similar to Glee, I guess relatively early Ryan Murphy hit. Um, but yeah, I mean, in terms of award stuff, I think the Golden Globes would be where anything had any potential with this. Perhaps a song pulls through, but um, I guess I'm most curious to see Meryl Streep because this feels like a bit of an outlier choice from hers. I guess most similar to like Into the Woods several years ago at this point, but
Yeah.
uh, yeah, kind of and heck, even Kidman being in this. Kidman has been very hands on with most of her work the past few years. I wonder if this was just a check for some of them, or they were really excited to do music and just have a good time. Who's to say? But um, I think you said that over like the sweeping conclusion by the end of the film that'll probably win over enough people anyway who like these kind of movies. So you know, it's not that deep at the end of the day.
Yeah. Pretty big nothing movie for me. We're gonna be talking more Meryl Streep in just a little bit. Let's take a little left turn, and we're gonna talk about Small Axe, the fourth installment. Alex Wheatle, the shortest installment of the
Yes.
series, only about an hour long. Um, Dave, we talked about the first three, praised them all, felt like they were all really good. Did that continue with Alex Wheatle for you?
I'd say Alex Wheatle is my least favorite of the three we've seen so far. Doesn't make it bad, but it's also the one that I think struggles with its form the most. As you said, it's barely over an hour long. The most episodic of the anthology films that we've been getting from Steve McQueen. And I would say that Alex Wheatle kind of leaves you with a question with eyebrow raised about the second half of this story. Because in doing research, or if going in, Alex Wheatle, successful writer and creator in his adult life, like a lot of, I guess, like Red, White, and Blue. We don't get the Leroy Logan turning the police department around and having some successes, relatively speaking. In Alex Wheatle, we don't see Alex Wheatle's uh, actual like growth and changes in his life come to fruition. We just kind of get those seeds planted when we see him reading in prison and stuff.
Mhm.
So to me, it was like, I don't know if this one did anything that different from Red, White, and Blue or Mangrove to me. Like, you have the small scale stuff of Red, White, and Blue. You have the direct conflict with the police, like Mangrove. You have a lot of things we have seen already from Small Axe, but I don't know if this one resonated with me just as much. But I still liked it. I thought, I don't know, how do you say the lead actor's name? Shay Cole.
Yep.
Um, it's his first role. I thought he was quite good as Alex.
Yeah, I thought he was really good. It's a I think there's a lot to get into with this role, right? But it's a probably a tough one to play because it's a lot of suffering in silence, looking very uncomfortable, anxious, out of place a lot of the time because Alex Wheatle's story is he was in what it was an orphanage or a foster home type setting that he gets kind of sent out of. Um, and for facing racism is kind of what led to this, right? He's taunted at school, gets in trouble, gets sent away, and it kind of shows the story about how he is like this lost person who doesn't understand who he is and is
Yeah.
looking for anything to kind of tell him, gravitate towards music, then is incarcerated in the Brixton riots, where he's then kind of forced to face like that question of like identity and how he kind of comes to find it in literature and understanding his own history, his own background. It ends with him finally exploring it. And I think the point of this story a little bit more, to kind of juxtapose against Red, White, and Blue, which I feel like is a bit more about like perseverance and making the hard choice, even when it seems like everybody's turning their back on you, including your community, when you know this is kind of going to benefit them in the long run, is that uh, understanding of self and understanding of history and past and um, the systems you come from is the only way that you can truly understand you and become the person you're meant to be. Um, and Alex Wheatle goes on to be a very successful writer. So I think the story could have used some more time on the back end to kind of let things breathe and maybe come to a bit more of a impactful conclusion. But overall, I think this is still pretty quality from McQueen.
Yeah, I think to that identity point, the line that stood out to me was when the barber
Hmm.
is talking to him and like Alex is first kind of being shown the ropes of his new community, and he asked him about being African,
Hmm.
and he's like, "Well, yeah, I may be black, but I'm from Surrey,"
Hmm.
and it's like the question of, well, what does it mean to be black in Britain in
Yeah,
the '80s or late '70s? I forget exactly when that was at that point, but like that is a resonant thing, and like again, like the identity and the gray nature to a lot of that West Indian black experience in England has been a consistent theme
hmm,
throughout Small Axe. You think of Leroy Logan's very conservative father, right? You think of the restaurant owner from Mangrove, who's not all rah rah about the Black Panthers, like Letitia Wright's character, right? That's been a consistent theme. Um, I think that's probably the strongest stuff in Alex Wheatle. Again, is the coming to terms with identity and what that means at the time.
for sure. Um, you know, even the bad or the bad quote unquote the less good episodes or films in this series are still really quality and really compelling to watch. So tune in if you haven't been. We have the final one next week. We'll be talking about then giving our final thoughts on the series slash
Mhm.
final film, however we want to go about it. But
Prospect.
yeah, why don't we move on to an animated film, which we don't talk about animated films too often, Dave. But this one, Wolfwalkers, I think definitely definitely deserves to be talked about, and I think we'll be discussing it more when the Academy Awards come around, because this is not only I think a really well told and well written story. But the animation in this is really really fun to look at. Uh, Kind of like reading a children's storybook in a lot of ways. It reminded me of. Um, Hey, you were the one that turned me on to this. Tell me what made you want to check this out to begin with.
Well, yeah, coming out of Toronto this year, Wolfwalkers was just getting tremendous acclaim. Uh, what is it, like 98 on Rotten Tomatoes, whatever it is? It's
Mhm.
very, very high consensus at that. And I think the narrative quickly became that Wolfwalkers is the biggest challenge to Pixar's Soul coming out on Christmas on Disney Plus. That'd be the biggest challenge of Soul's best animated feature um, chances at the Oscars, which are still several months away. And I think that that's twofold. One, because Wolfwalkers is very strong, but also because it's made by Cartoon Saloon, whose three previous feature films were all also nominated for Best Animated Feature. So there's some pedigree here in the animation field, and that I think that tracks and makes a lot of sense. If you watch Wolfwalkers, which is available in the U.S. on Apple TV Plus, now you would think that I'd imagine. And this is different than Pixar. This is 2D hand drawn animation, very traditional. It's very different, but I think the animation is still quite beautiful. Even if it's not the most arthroscopic stuff I've ever seen. It's I think very very fitting. Like the music, the beats of the story, everything seemed to kind of make sense and fit. And I think it's a kind of straightforward story, but it's I thought it was quite lovely.
Yeah, I found it to be really heartfelt. And like you said, I don't think this is a story that's, breaking new ground or something no one's ever seen. But I found it to be really effective, and I felt myself just totally sucked into and invested in the characters. Especially as you reach kind of the end of the movie, you're waiting for the dad to kind of pick his side and like take his stand. And I think it's really satisfying when he finally does, and you find that he is one of them as well. I I also just found the relationship between the two little girls, Robin and was it Mora or um, Meb? Sorry, to be really just sweet and a pleasure to watch. And you kind of get elements of other past animated films. I feel when it almost kind of felt like the Nala Simba reunion in a way, when Robin becomes a Wolfwalker and is kind of learning her skills and things like that. I found that to be really great. Um, I don't know. And then there's like elements of some of like the old classic like Quasimodo or like Beauty and the Beast type feel when they're like in the town in the village of Kilkenny running around. Like it's just
Yeah.
really some great moments, and the animation is just super interesting. I found like it allowed for a lot of cool like cuts between scenes or things kind of like melding into each other as you change or transition. It's really really impressively done overall.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, to me, I like the setting. Uh, I think the part that I liked about that a lot was, Oliver Cromwell, a real life figure, is our villain here, and also like the piousness of him. The strong presence of religion dominating culture at the time is very much part of the film. It all makes sense, and like the aversion to mysticism and magic and stuff, and the woods. It all kind of felt like of a piece to me. Um, I was actually, trying to predict the beats. I was kind of expecting like the dad, who's voiced by Sean Bean. I expected him to kind of kick the bucket at the end,
Mhm.
or I expected the mother Wolfwalker to get got, but neither actually happens, and it actually has a very very warm, happy ending at the end of the day, But like I think the stakes, the tension are really felt on the way.
Yeah, and I think how they portray not only the children side of like that longing for togetherness and acceptance and having to like compromise, take your own path, but seeing that for the adults as well, especially as the dad kind of finds his role um, being taken away from him, uh, his purpose kind of being belittled and told that he's not good at it, and then having to like find where he fits in the world again, and finding it by accepting something he didn't before. I just thought that was really well done and great storytelling device. So yeah, I would check. Well, I would recommend anyone to check this out if you're able to. Obviously it's on Apple Plus, so might be difficult for some people if you're not subscribed. But any last thoughts on Wolfwalkers?
Yeah, I mean, you only get a handful of animated movies in a year that are both entertaining to kids and engaging to adults at the same time. And I think Wolfwalkers is one of those. So it makes sense that it's getting a lot of acclaim. And I, like you said, I think expect this conversation to continue once we see Soul and once award stuff starts rolling out. It makes a lot of sense.
Let's move on to our final film of the day, Dave. Let them all talk. And we talked about Ryan Murphy working. Steven Soderbergh has also been working. We talked about him twice last year, High Flying Bird and The Laundromat for Netflix. Now dropping Let Them All Talk on HBO Max. Also has another film for HBO Max coming out next year called No Sudden
Oh,
Moves.
yeah.
He's
Loaded
working.
cast.
He's working. Yeah, I'm excited for that one. But this is the story of a Meryl Streep, a famous author, taking her friends on a journey or on a cruise, a trip.
Yep.
Um, bringing her,
Crossing.
yeah, bringing her nephew along, and her publisher trying to use the nephew to kind of like push the writing of a new book in the direction they want to go, and mayhem ensues. Not really mayhem, but some interesting dynamics ensue, and as these relationships are kind of fleshed out, and they're especially Meryl Streep and her friends are kind of forced to like face each other. I think there's a lot of stuff to dig into there. Um, why don't we start with just Soderbergh in general? I mean, we talked about Fincher last week. Fincher, one of the top tier. Do you see Soderbergh in that same discussion?
Yeah, for sure. And I think he's very interesting because Soderbergh pushes boundaries and tries new things quite often. Just in the time we've been doing the pod, he had Logan Lucky, where he was very hands on with the distribution in a unique and uncommon way. You had Mosaic, a TV show on HBO, which was like very interactive, multi-screen experience. You have High Flying Bird and Unsane, which were shot on iPhones.
Mhm.
Uh, Not to mention we had Contagion take on a whole new context in life and dominate iTunes charts when the pandemic first started. Um, he's Like he said, he's always working, and this is the first of a 3-film deal now at HBO Max after previously doing some stuff with Netflix, as you said. So Soderbergh always feels like he has his finger on the pulse and is always trying to do different stuff. And again, I think he deserves lots of leeway and rope because he's working so often and has all kinds of different ideas. And in this case, I think Let Them All Talk certainly factors into this because he literally made a movie on the voyage of the Queen Mary 2 between North America and England. And that is inherently a fixed amount of time to make and shoot the movie because once the voyage ends, the movie shooting is over. And only someone like Soderbergh would try something as zany as that.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And I also think the movie is a lovely time, like a lot of his movies are. So yeah, Soderbergh, he's definitely at the top, but he's has definitely his unique identity, as I think everyone knows at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I think about Soderbergh, I think about like the Ocean's movies. Probably his biggest commercial successes. Magic Mike. But I think especially in recent years, he's definitely just trying stuff more. He's trying some less traditional filmmaking things like you talked about, and I do give him credit for that. But I think it's been to varying effect. The Laundromat we talked about had some issues. High Flying Bird I think was really underrated, but I think movies like Magic Mike and High Flying Bird and Let Them All Talk, I kind of see in a similar sense because these are really like human stories, kind of centered around like you know outstanding job or yeah, I guess it's usually a job. You're right, these non-traditional jobs, and I think Let Them All Talk, being Meryl Streep being this author, kind of allows for this journey where it's really these friends dancing around each other as they have all these interesting built up resentments towards each other that they can't find a way to say. And at the center of this is Lucas Hedges, who I think is in a funny role for him. He works a lot too, and I think he gets to kind of play this like conduit between all these relationships, this in between man, um, while also trying to like pursue his own interests. And I think I found him to be probably one of the most delightful parts of the movie, was just him at the center of all of this weirdness. Um, that and I have to say, I was really, really taken by uh, Gemma Chan. I just found her super charming in this movie, and kind of couldn't take my eyes off her whenever she was on screen. Um, but the rest of the movie, I'm not sure how interesting I found it to be. I think at times I found myself a little bit bored, or like I wish they would just kind of like finally have it out. But
Yeah.
were you feeling the same way?
Well, it didn't. Yeah, I think because it doesn't do what you expect. Mariel's character dies. They don't really, right after everything happens, and it's like you. I think going in when you think about the premise, you think it's going to be like this big to do, this big fight or something, or some like hijinks are going to happen. But no, it's really these three 70-year-old women chilling,
Mhm.
kind of talking and stuff. And like for me, it's like when Diane Weist is like bow down, bitch, when they're playing Scrabble. It's like those are the
Yeah.
moments that I think are the best about that stuff, you know. So it's dynamics you don't exactly expect, but like on the other hand, like Meryl's character interacting with that other writer who's like a Dean Koontz, like makes many books. They're not that great though, but they sell a lot. Like that kind of
Mhm.
author, and she's much more heady, um, take her time, really self-serious type author type. I like those dynamics, I like those thoughts because those kind of persist throughout the movie and interact a lot with Gemma Chan's like role in the film as like a agent of her publisher.
Right.
So that stuff was cool. But yeah, I actually think the most compelling stuff is definitely Lucas Hedges kind of like batting his eyes at Gemma Chan and
Yeah.
like seeing if this is going to be like a pseudo romance, which was unique to me because she's much older than Lucas Hedges in real life, and
Mhm.
usually it's the other way around, right? Where the woman's way younger than the older man. So that kind of stood out to me for that, especially because like as the movie's going on, you're seeing this dude keep leaving Meryl's apartment, and you're like, huh, what's that about? And then it's kind of a twist that he's actually her doctor, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it kind of had a unique rhythm to it, but yeah, for me, it was definitely the Gemma Chan scenes. I
Yeah.
think she was really great.
No, Gemma Chan was great, and I also going back to the doctor part. John Douglas Thompson playing the doctor. I thought that was probably one of the funniest moments of it for me when he ended up being the doctor. Because when you go back and you look at all these scenes, especially as they're kind of juxtaposed against Candice Bergen, who is really just like gold digging on this boat in a sense.
Yeah.
You're just kind of like, oh, Meryl Streep trying to get it in as well, when really it's her
Yeah.
doctor's watching her because she has this heart issue that or this medical issue that
Yep.
was
He was acquitted, right? That's not so
unknown.
bad. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Candice Bergman's definitely having the most fun.
Oh yeah,
Of the three older women, that's probably like the best role. Like, it's just get
for
that
sure.
show out like that.
And be funny the whole time. I mean, even when they go back and show her working for Victoria's Secrets or whatever the women's underwear thing is,
Hmm.
like, it's always funny when she's going back and forth with the manager. So
Yeah, definitely.
um, yeah, I mean, I'm never going to complain about a Soderbergh movie. I think there's just types of Soderbergh movies I prefer, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I would definitely say that the next one, No Sudden Move, definitely has more of the Ocean's 11, Ocean's trilogy vibes, right? The film focuses on a group of criminals falling into a trap. And then you look at that cast: Cheadle, Del Benicio, Harbor, Ham, Leota, Kieran Culkin, Julia Fox, Matt Damon cameo. It's like, yes, please. I'll take all
Yeah.
of this as soon as possible. Thank you.
Yeah. When is that coming out?
No
Can it
date
be
yet,
tomorrow?
but production wrapped in November, so you imagine it'll be in edit for a few months, and then it'll come out middle end of the year on HBO Max. So that's exciting. Also,
Yeah.
Gemma Chan will be in our live soon too because she got the rare recasting in the MCU and is one of the Eternals, and also is in the Don't Worry Darling movie, which is that Olivia Wilde movie with Harry Styles and Florence Pugh. So
Hell yeah. Give
she's
her more roles.
yeah, I think she's Crazy Rich Asians was the blow up for her a little later in
Mm,
life, but like I think it's clear everyone knows Gemma Chan's really good, so she's probably being selective with her parts at this point.
for sure. Uh, we can't watch the next Soderbergh movie, No Sudden Moves yet. But Dave, what should the people be watching or listening to?
Yeah, Tenet out on VOD at last. Watch that on the best screen and sound system you have. Mandalorian wrapping up season 2. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, the Chadwick Boseman tour de force performance, evidently. That'll be out on Netflix on Friday, as well as the end of Small Axe on Prime. And also, I think we're excited to check out Another Round, which is a Denmark film starring Mads Mikkelsen involving drinking alcohol, and will be Denmark's submission for Best International Feature. Mads Mikkelsen and beer, I'm down with that.
So follow the pod on Twitter at Nostalgia Pod. Subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/Nostalgia Pod, and then SoundCloud.com/nostalgiapod. We'll see you next week.